are a few conservative and nationalist political parties in Poland, many of which have a strong youth following. In particular, the Republicans, a smaller conservative party that works alongside the governing Law and Justice Party. Anna Maria Szarkowska is the firebrand leader of the Republicans. She isn't the stale, old white male kind of politician we're used to seeing, so I thought it would be interesting to hear from her why she thinks younger people are getting involved with her party. Anna Maria is a member of the Sejm, the lower house of Polish Parliament, and she kindly agreed to meet with me one evening to discuss her work, the young people in her party, and the control that communists and the far left still have on the national press.
Our party was formed quite recently. We are a young party, and I think that we bring with us a new approach to politics. First of all, we group together young people. We are a party of the young generation. Secondly, our goal is not to become a party for the masses, but rather somewhat elitist. By that, I mean that our party has grown out of an environment of experts, and we form our ranks out of people who are active in NGOs. The character of our party is very much bottom-up. The rest of the parties are organized top-down, often coalesced around the party leader. We have a very different approach to how to organize our party.
So the polls are showing that the youth in Poland are over 60% are voting conservative or right-leaning, which is vastly different to in the UK. In the UK, just 2% of British youths associate with the national religion. A recent poll actually showed that young people, if only young people voted in the next general election, not a single Conservative MP would be elected, but 600 Socialist MPs would be. I wonder why it's so different. I wonder what's motivating the youth of Poland.
It's true that our generation is very closely connected to conservative values. We are very often inspired by heroes and role models from our history, often people from World War II, such as the soldiers of the Home Army, the National Armed Forces, NSC. You could even say that this kind of patriotism exploded among our young in recent years. Previously, for many years, back when I was in elementary school and in high school, things looked very different. The mainstream was very leftist, and their views dominated in mass media. I think that this changed when my generation reached adulthood and the internet came around, because it helped people to break this code of silence surrounding many topics. And secondly, political correctness couldn't silence the debate in the public sphere anymore. I think that it was the internet in the end which made us realize that we aren't alone in our opinions, that there is a ton of people who think like us. So naturally, young people started forming different kinds of patriotic organizations. And today, we are reaping the reward of what was done back then, giving us the wow effect when it comes to the growth of patriotism in Poland. I also think that an important part to being something of an ideological foundation of Polish patriotism is Catholicism. You cannot separate Polishness from Christianity. And in Poland, the Catholic Church was always strong, and so was our bond with Christianity. And I think that this is the foundation on which the young generation was built, a generation which is committed to conservatism and is not ashamed of being Polish, nor in the values which it believes in. It wants to give substance to those values, and it wants to build a Poland for the new generation.
So you make a few interesting points there. We ourselves are from the internet. We're part of this new media system. People have lost faith in the old media, and it seems that's happening here as well. I mean, not too long ago, last year, we were here for the Independence Day March. The mainstream media in the UK slammed it as far-right, neo-Nazi, racist, the lot of it. They're lying about Poland because they're patriotic, and they're lying about Brits because they're patriotic. So it's interesting to see that parallel, but also I'd love to know a little bit more. If you could tell me about the post-communists and the UKWAD, if you could tell me about that, because from what I know, the old guard communists are using old money to build up old school media in Poland to tell lies, right?
I think that the problem we have in Poland is not just, well, on one side, of course, the post-communist UKWAD or post-communist order control mass media in Poland for a long time, but on the other side, mass media in Poland was also brought up by foreign players. And it is obvious that If I'm a foreign owner of media in a certain country, then I will want the media reporting to correspond with my interests. And this is unfortunately our reality. When our media is controlled by German owners, the point of view broadcasted by that media naturally must be beneficial to the German interests in Poland. So when we have media controlled by foreign owners, it's obvious that they will work towards the goals and interests determined by those foreign owners. We must keep this in mind, and this is why it's so important for us to create our own media companies. We must have such information channels which will allow us to reach our citizens. In certain ways, this is happening in Poland today through public service media, but I think that an underestimated source of that is alternative media, which has a large audience and is deemed credible by the public.
Które również gromadzą wielu odbiorców i które są uważane przez ludzi jako po prostu wiarygodne.
So what do you think it is specifically about the youth that makes the youth wake up to this? And is it happening on the same level with the older generations who may well remember communism? How is it, from a Western perspective, how is it that a young population in Poland who don't remember communism are so brave in the face of it, they're fighting against the far left, whereas we in the West are kowtowing and terrified?
We have a couple of issues at play here. The first thing is that we are currently in a moment when Poland is truly regaining its independence. The fall of communism in 1989 was in many ways illusionary, since, well, of course, the form of government did actually transform in 1989, and almost all companies that used to be state-owned were privatized, but unfortunately, the companies and wealth was privatized in such a way that it ended up in communist and post-communist hands anyway, or at least in the hands of people associated with them. For ordinary people, the free market only meant that people could sell their products in small bazaars or marketplaces, but the wealth of large Polish companies remained in the hands of communists. Today, this is changing, but we are still in the process of regaining control of our state. Poles are a very industrious people, and they are showing that they can rebuild their state. They are creating their own companies and run them successfully, but we also need time. We have been walking this trail for 30 years in Poland since communism fell. You could say, like in the way that the chosen people of the Bible wandered the desert for 40 years before reaching their promised land. And I think that we, as the young generation, will soon also reach our promised land, a land which we will build on completely different principles than the ones we have had so far. And when it comes to your second question, which concerned why our young generation is committed to conservatism, while you have the opposite case in Western Europe, I believe that it's connected with Poland not abandoning Christianity. It's very important to us, and it's the last line of defense. It's the ultimate norm and moral backbone that we have. God and the values associated with Him is something that allows us to determine what really matters to us in our life and to define the values that are important to us and which we want to fight for. If we lack such values and we only live life of materialism or consumptionism, then in reality we have no value which we would be willing to fight for and sacrifice ourselves for. And in such a situation, things start to look like they currently do in the West. If we lack such values and we only live life of materialism and consumptionism, then in reality we have no values which we would be willing to fight for and sacrifice ourselves for. And in such a situation, things start to look like they currently do in the West. There we can see a type of civilization which is in its death throes, because a civilization which is abandoning the values on which it was built is dying, and on its ruins a new, more vital civilization will be built. This is what we are witnessing in the West, where the Muslim civilization is about to replace your own.
Właśnie zaczyna wyglądać tak jak na Zachodzie.
So this harks back to the point, that's really interesting, that harks back to the point earlier that only 2% of British youths actually find any kind of association with the Church of England, our national religion. What I'm wondering is it the same in Poland? I'm presuming not, that the national religion has been hijacked by the far left. Because what I find in the UK is that many people are leaving behind the Church of England because of the far left politics. And is that infiltration of our religion that's destroyed the religious foundations of our country, is that what changed Britain? And is that the difference with Poland?
Czy to jest o tyle trudne
I
pytanie?
think it's a difficult question because I think it's connected with the degree of which Catholics are committed to dogma or certain doctrines that we believe to be infallible and cannot be changed. As a result, our teachings must be in accordance with the message delivered by Jesus Christ. On the opposite side, there is the idea that the Christian faith can be changed, that it can be flexible and shaped by people living in modern times. In Catholicism, we have well-defined dogmatic principles which we cannot tamper with. Even if the Pope himself would suddenly change his mind and say, for example, that abortion, which is evil and killing a human being, would be allowed from now on, it would break the rules of Catholic teachings and therefore it cannot happen in the Catholic Church. So I think that if you don't have these dogmatic principles, if there aren't certain values which you cannot question, then your church starts to adjust itself to the modern world. Instead, it should be the church telling the modern world in which direction to go, not the opposite way around, so that the church adopts the norms and values which dominate the modern world.
To wówczas Kościół zaczyna się dostosowywać do świata.
So you would say Britain needs more Catholicism?
Prawdopodobnie
You could say so. I think that this might actually be happening as we speak because a lot of Polish priests have followed the faithful and moved to Great Britain. Even the priests from my congregation now reside in London, so I know that you have a lot of great priests arriving.
Just to round up, could you give me an insight into what the Republican Party is doing at the moment? What's next for the Republicans?
The Republican Party has its representatives in Parliament, meaning myself and Ms. Małgorzata Janowska. Naturally, we want to grow, and we have our people in important positions of Polish government, on the boards of state-controlled companies. We have a lot of experts in our ranks and cooperate with many NGOs. I think that our main goal for the coming years is to reach a number of MPs in the Parliament, which allow us to initiate real changes, so that the things which are important to us can be passed in Parliament. We have a year's time for that to happen as parliamentary elections are coming up next fall, so please keep your fingers crossed for the Polish Republican Party.
Well, it's interesting actually because that's exactly what happened in the UK. There was a party called UKIP that did extremely well, and what they did by progressing slowly through the years is they got us the Brexit vote. It does show the power of smaller parties in Parliament, in the European Parliament even. So I hope that goes well, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
So what message can I take home to Britain, to the young people of Britain who feel intimidated and scared by the far left, who are attempting to control every part of their lives? And yet here we are in Poland, the youth of Poland are standing up to the far left and voting conservatively. What message can I take home for young Brits?
Przede wszystkim chciałabym...
I especially want to tell young British people to not give up and to keep fighting for the values that are important to them, to continue the fight for our world, that of the Latin or Western civilization, to not give up on any ground, because if they do, that territory will be taken by the civilization of Islam. I also want to encourage them to engage in international cooperation. It's very important for us today to talk to each other and to work together so that we can defend our common values.
I want to discover the real story in Poland, not the story from the mainstream press that Poland's just a racist country, but in fact the real story that the Polish youth are voting more conservatively than ever and standing up in the face of far left and EU tyranny. Will you help me cover our modest expenses for hotel, airfare and cabs? Will you help us raise £1,000 to cover this important work? Please go to rebelpoland.com. Thanks so much for your support. If you'd like to help us cover our modest expenses for this trip, please go to rebelpoland.com.